and share the,
Right.
the
So I'm
screen.
not trying to bridge the Izak gap. I'm trying to start with a descriptive claim. So if the descriptive claim is true, then we can move to the prescriptive side of it. But right now, you would either need to agree with me that descriptively I'm right or that descriptively I'm wrong.
I can't agree with you to say that descriptively you're right until you apply what you're saying in theory to the practice of modern day society. How does your equal force objection, how does this principle work in society? What are you saying in terms
so
of
I'm
how
saying that
women and
because
men
that
coexist?
Yeah, I think that because that is the case, that men deserve to have various privileges that they're not given in society,
Okay.
which they should be given in society.
So what are the privileges that you think that men should have that women should not have?
Well, primarily, I think that if you're going to look at an equalization, what I would do prescriptively would be to roll voting back. And that's for both sexes. I think that rolling voting back for both sexes is a good idea, and have some sort of perhaps like one house voting system or one marriage voting system, or people who have done some sort of collective service to the state for a voting system.
Agree with
I
that.
think that those things would all be very good systems for everybody.
Why?
Now, I would apply that, hang on, I would apply that broadly to men, and I would apply that to women. I think that right now men get the shaft because men are required to do a lot of jobs that women are not, which keeps society going, and women are not doing those things. And because of that, I don't understand why it is that women can nullify their votes and disenfranchise them, and most importantly, vote to send them to wars they don't have to go fight in.
So
And
you would
that's
like
a good
to
argument right there. It's
disenfranchise-
just the argument is if you have a female president and then you have a female legislative body, right? You have the, let's say, the Senate and the House and the judges and majority females. Now we have to enter a war with another country, right? Who do you send? Who do you send to just fight that war? It's gonna be mostly men. Is that fair? Let me know in the comments, in the chat.
both the men and women's vote.
Most of them, yes, I
What
think would be a better idea.
this achieve?
Well, it would be that it would achieve the same thing our founders basically wanted to achieve, which is that they thought that you would have to have a stake in the country in order to vote.
But if you live in the country and if you exist in the country and if you're being legislated by the laws that the country is making, don't you have a stake in that?
No, not always.
You don't?
In fact, many times you don't. Many times, many people actually get more back from the state than they put into the state.
Good
So
point.
that's at the expense of other people.
Who is that?
So there's lots of people who get a mass amount back from the government that they never pay to the government.
Yep.
This can happen through things like Social Security disability, things like welfare, things like even earned income child credit that you may receive, even though you don't actually pay anything into the system or very little into the system.
But it's a crime to lie on
is?
your taxes and commit. Isn't that tax fraud to claim
No.
a dependent?
No,
that
no, no.
you-
There's just
that is tax fraud.
No,
to
it's not
claim a
tax. Listen, it's
dependent
not
that you're
tax
not
fraud. I'm saying
taking
that
care
there's
of.
people who get more out of the system than they put into the system.
Okay, but they're still at stake because they still live here now. Are their
Well,
lives not at stake if we're
What is it?
legislating them?
But
I don't
that wouldn't
understand what you're
follow
saying.
that because they live here, they deserve the right to vote, though.
Yes, no taxation without representation. That's the point of
Yeah, but
representative democracy is that
no.
everyone is represented.
Then
in
how come the
democracy.
founding fathers didn't give everybody the right to vote from the beginning?
I mean, the founding fathers also endorsed and owned slaves.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
man,
that's-
that's
slavery.
yeah,
Look-
yo. This is what I don't like. This kind of, we have to bring race for everything kind of thing. It's just, I'm tired of it. It's not even a good argument. It's a lazy argument.
To finish, go ahead.
I mean, the
Well, she
founding
just
fathers
asked-
also endorsed
Yeah,
and owned
just-
slaves.
Just let her
Okay,
finish.
but
Do you believe in chattel
yeah,
slavery?
so you do realize that they could do bad thing, right? I can agree that's bad thing, but that has nothing relationally to do with how they set up the system of government.
I mean, I thought this was going to be a debate on feminism. Honestly, I think that's kind of wild because it sounds like
Well,
you're
you're-
disenfranchising
well, you're-
men. So who do you think would be? Are you trying
Well,
to
I'm
go
not
back?
I'm not.
You are. You're taking
I'm
away.
not disenfranchising men. Calm down. I'll explain
But if
it.
you're taking away the votes of a man because he is not, I guess, landowning, is that what what's the
well, I
criteria
think ultimately,
for having a vote?
I think ultimately more men would be voting because they would have more stake.
So can I ask? Can every man go to prison?
Yeah.
Okay, if they commit a crime, they can go to prison.
Yeah.
Everyone can do that.
Yes.
Okay, and everyone is in this country has to abide by the laws of this country. Otherwise, they will go to prison. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so why wouldn't they be allowed to vote on the representatives that define those laws? If that is a stake. If you can go to prison for committing a
Now, Wackerman, you're saying that men fighting war has been the tradition, with notable example and variation in cultures. Northern Europeans have more women warriors than Southern, but that doesn't. Yeah, but having more warriors it doesn't mean that at the end you're not gonna choose men to fight those war. What does that more warriors mean? You have 5 women more than the other army. You have 2. Like in reality, you wanna go when you go to war. You wanna go to the most effective approach. I mean, you're telling me you're sending females. Imagine this: you're sending females to just battle Russia. The United States is sending females to battle Russia. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna work. Even females themselves cannot really, equate the force that is the need to just run the military apparatus. Like, have you seen some of these police videos where 3 females are trying to stop 1 female? They can't. They can. You might have some Hercules, I don't know, or She-Hulks that are very, exception to rules, but in majority, even the weakest man, you can work with him to just at least get to the average of any man. That's the argument. If you want to be effective, which one would you use?
a crime that is created by the government, then you do have a stake legislatively in the laws that the government creates.
That still wouldn't follow that you would need to vote.
Yes, you would need to vote.
Why?
You want to vote for the representatives that create laws that are just and fair to you.
Yeah, why? Like you could have
Because you could go to prison.
Okay,
That's a huge stake.
I'll show you, right? Can kings put you in prison?
Yeah,
Can kings also pass just laws?
sometimes, maybe.
Okay, so
maybe not.
if kings pass just laws, why do you need to vote?
Well, why did we fight an
answer
entire
guys are crazy in the
revolution?
comments.
Before you
section,
ask another one, I just answered all of yours. If a king passes just laws, why would you need to vote?
Because a king can also pass unjust laws.
So can legislatures.
Sure, but if
We
you
do it
have
all
a
the
stake
time.
in that, and if you're able to represent for your legislator, you can vote a legislator out.
Yeah, but you can
can't
also
vote a king
rebel
out.
against kings. So, like, that's what I'm saying. Your position doesn't follow. It doesn't actually follow for you to say that because you can be imprisoned inside of a nation, that somehow gives you the right to vote.
Well, because
Hang
you
on.
have a stake. You're saying that
hang on. I'm
people
falsifying
don't
your
have a
claim.
stake
I'm
in-
falsifying your claim. If you claim kings can make just laws, right?
Yes.
Then I don't understand. Why would people need to vote when kings are making just laws?
Well, then why would we leave the monarchy of England? If kings can make just laws, why would we leave?
Well, in that case, you had a nation apart that had a rebellion against the king.
Yes,
That's what was
sure.
going on. But kings have been rebelled against historically under certain circumstances many times.
So you'd like to go back to feudalism? Like you
it's not
don't believe
feudalism.
in
No,
democracy?
he's
Well,
not-
yeah, that is
No,
the
it would
feudalism.
be
he's-
Feudalism is
He's describing his situation, right? I don't think, and they do this a lot, right? When they just want to prescribe right away. But you're saying that. He's not saying. He's just stating the fact that people don't understand that we have a civil war in this country. Like, men were not happy with the deal that we're getting in the South, and they just wanted to succeed the Union. People forget that. People really forget that we have a civil war in this country. That men decided to just, up an arm and just go and confront the federal government. People forget that.
under a monarchy.
It would be called limited democracy, which is exactly what we had here.
Yeah,
Do you
a
think we had
republic.
feudalism because most people couldn't vote here?
We had limited democracy, and then there were like many uprisings against that limited democracy because everyone
No,
deserves
there
the
wasn't
right.
uprisings really against that. The only uprising that I'm aware of in American history against America was the Civil War.
The Civil War,
Yep.
the Civil Rights
But that
movement,
wasn't about
the first
voting.
feminist movement,
That
the
wasn't
second
about
feminist
voting.
movement, the Civil Rights movement,
No,
the
no,
voting
no,
rights
no,
movement.
Civil
no.
War.
The
All of
Civil
those were
War
about-
wasn't about voting.
Well, I mean, it was about the owning of chattel slaves.
So not about voting then?
which is also about
this is gonna be
human
hard,
and
guys.
civil rights.
But not about voting, though.
But voting is a civil right.
I don't know. I'm not sure that I believe in
It's
this
about freedom and it's about
conceptual-
representation.
Yeah. So
the
let's
point is
So
representation.
let's back up.
That's what voting is.
Yeah.
Voting is representation and democracy.
I understand, but you haven't actually made the positive case for why people need to be able to vote.
People need to be able to vote because they have a stake in the legislation in this country. If you can be imprisoned in this country, if you can be robbed of your bodily autonomy by the legislators of this country, then you should be able to have a stake in what the laws that those legislators are making.
Well,
no?
let's see if this makes sense. Do you agree with me that individual voters don't actually have very much power at all?
Individual voters, no, but that's the point of a collective voting
Yeah,
body.
I'm with you. So
Yeah.
individuals already don't really have very much power just because they can vote, right?
Sure.
So isn't it the case, actually, that what you're advocating for is political tribalism? Because you don't have individual power as a voter, you actually have to tribalize with other voters in order to have any sort of collective power,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you're taking away power from all the voters,
Well,
so it
can
wouldn't
you
even be
answer my
individual.
question, please? Tribalism, the idea that you, as the individual, do not have power, right?
Look at this lady.
Yes.
You do have to collectivize with other people, right?
Okay, but how is taking
Hang on,
away
can you
a
answer
vote?
yes or no?
You know why she's not
Yeah,
answering?
okay,
You know,
no?
But
the reason she's not asking the question, and I see this a lot of these debates, man, is they're trying to avoid themselves being in a position of accountability to that answer. Sometimes, man, just say yes or no and just defend that point. Right? I understand it's sometimes you don't want to be in the position where you don't want to be accountable. I guess we're in the internet. You don't want to have a gotcha moment. You don't want to be the victim of gotcha moment. But these conversations don't go anywhere without a clear answer.
But
Okay.
here's my question: how is taking away more people's votes disincentivizing political tribalism?
Yes,
because now I have to
let her
band
finish,
with
let her
someone.
finish.
Because now I have to band with someone who has a vote. I don't even get a stake. So you're saying because people don't have enough power to vote, I'm going to take
You
what
didn't-
little
you-
power they do have.
You're not
away.
answering my question, though.
It just doesn't make sense
Yeah, I
structurally.
know, but you got to answer my question.
It just doesn't sound like you believe in.
It sounds like you need to
democracy.
answer my question, though.
It sounds like your question is
Yeah, is it-
meant to
I told
trap
you.
me because
Can you
you're
just,
arguing
I
can you
told
just
you guys.
answer the
logical
question,
fallacies.
please?
It sounds-
What's fallacious about my argument?
You're saying that people do not have a stake in this country, therefore they do not have a right to vote.
It's not what I said.
Yes,
What
it
you're doing
is.
is a straw man fallacy.
Can we go back to
yeah,
what
you
he
can
said?
go. You can go
Let's-
back.
can
What
we
I
go
said
back
to you
that?
specifically is what you're saying doesn't logically follow. And when I'm talking about political tribalism, do you agree with me that you do, if you need to have collectives to have actual political power, are you not promoting political tribalism?
If you need to have but that's how voting works. It's about a majority.
Not
So
answering
then
the question.
you are
Yes.
promoting collective political tribalism, right?
So voting and then the will of the majority is essentially political tribalism, is what you're saying?
No.
Well, it's not really the will of the majority.
It is the will
Here's
of
what
the
happens.
majority.
No, not really.
Do you understand how voting works?
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, well then tell me how it's the will of the majority when a California legislator gets elected.
Well, everyone who would like to vote can vote, and then whoever
What
gets
about-
the most
what about the
votes
people in Georgia?
wins. Well, why would a person in Georgia get to vote on a
So it's not
legislator for a
really the
California state
collective, it's the
legislator?
tribe, right?
But then Georgians get to vote for their
Right,
state
so it's a
legislator.
tribe then?
And then all of those legislators come together
So it's a
to
tribe.
create laws.
So it's a tribe?
It's not a tribe, but
Well,
those are called states.
Yeah,
That's what
states are voting for their own interests, right?
But states will vote for the governors.
Yeah.
Why would I get to vote
Would-
for the
would-
governor?
wait,
Hold on,
yeah,
pause.
hold on. Let her
Listen to
finish.
me. Why would I get to vote for
Mm-hmm.
the governor of, let's say, Tennessee, if I
Right.
don't live in Tennessee?
Makes sense.
Okay.
So it's almost
So then
like these
why would-
individual states, right? They vote along tribal lines for that state's particular interests, right?
Yes, and
They're
then
not,
each state has a representative
Right,
in
which
the
they said-
collective government.
She's basically describing how the government works, but that's not what Andrew's talking about. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying yes. That's there's some kind of tribalism here. Like, people from Texas feel very different from people from New York. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, guys.
Sure. In the federal government, right? You're talking about in our Senate and in our Congress, right?
Yes.
Great. So let's start with this. If it is the case that you have California and Nevada, these are two states which are next to each other, you agree,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
Can these states vote against each other's interests when it
Of
comes
course
to
they can.
resources?
Yeah.
In the federal government, yes.
No, even at the state,
State
level, they can, right?
state level.
Why
of
would they
course.
be able to at the state?
Because I can decide that I don't want crazy people in Nevada, and then California can say yes, I want those crazy people. But you don't know these crazy people are for the well-being of the United States. Of course, you could, man.
State level. I can't vote for the Nevada governor. I can't vote for
Because perhaps there's something
Nevada
that perhaps Nevada has some type of, I don't know, assessed tax or something like this that they're able to collect, which disproportionately affects Californians in some way. They can do that, right?
what law is that?
Whatever it would be, they
So
can do it.
does it exist or does it not exist?
Listen, can they do that? Can they do that is my question.
Can Nevada legislate against California?
No, they're not legislating against. Listen to my question. Actually, I want you to repeat my question so I know
Yeah,
you actually heard
yeah.
it.
I'm sorry, I'm not a dog. I
Can you
don't,
There we
repeat
go.
it? Well, it's
No.
called steelmaning a
just
position.
say the question. then.
Okay. Can states vote
Joe,
against
can you
other
repeat that
states'
question?
interests simply by having a neighboring state, right? Let's just say, for instance, that you were to have like, oh, I don't know, trucks which went between Nevada and California, right?
Yes.
And California took advantage of this by raising taxes on gasoline, but only on the border areas where these goods came in. This disproportionate.